Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Tuesday show, Curious Crossroads, with co host Rachel Starkweather. Today, we're here with a guest, April StarOak. April, am I allowed to say how I know you?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so my fiance, Shane, is April's ex husband. You remember Rachel when we had that class on ethics and we were talking about conflicts of interest
Mhm.
but then we were talking about dual relationships and how it's okay to have them. Um, so anyway, it's
Just
it's
with this
uh
guy.
it's a fun way to get to know someone is like, we're like sister wives or whatever. So
I
all right.
love that.
Okay, so April, we basically are at a school, or there's a big astrology community watching this. Not big, but you know what I mean. And so, really, I think the goal today could be to get you into the mix because a lot of the people that we work with are remedy people, like
Mhm.
we're astrological remedy people. So, if someone goes through like a really hard time, we send them to shamans and things like that for remedies, basically. So, I think you definitely the students here would be love to meet you because of what you do. Okay, so in
Yeah.
this hour, we're going to get to know what you do and maybe look at the crossroads with astrology. So, April, tell us a little bit about yourself. I don't know. Let's start with do you know what your sign is?
So I know that my main like rising sign is Gemini. I know my moon is Aquarius, but I don't know the third one.
Are you a Pisces something?
I
Yes.
honestly don't know. May 26th, 81 is my birthday. Um,
Oh, is that Gemini
it,
sun?
Is it or Taurus?
I mean,
it's
Gemini.
Gemini, yeah. It's
Yeah,
right
Gemini
after
Sun.
the
I think
Taurus.
you're a
I'm pretty
Gemini
close to cusp.
Aquarius. Sorry. I think you're a Gemini Aquarius Pisces because I think I've been told that you have a Pisces moon because you're an
I
artist.
I know I have an Aquarius moon. I'm not sure what the like third one is. I only like passingly know astrology stuff. I'm not like super in depth with it. So
Okay, well,
yeah,
we will have to get a
interesting to
hold of
see
your
how
chart.
things like connect.
Leave it to us. We will descend upon your chart like a locust of flies. Okay. All right. So tell us what you do for work. I know you're kind of reemerging as a business. So tell us what you do.
Yeah. So my business name is Awakening Ouroboros. And my aim with this is to help people reconnect with their own like magic and gifts inside and really reconnect with that divine blueprint that we came in with that can get so cluttered and buried with a lot of life experiences and trauma, especially if we have like traumatic childhoods. Like a lot of that like divine blueprint stuff can get really buried and lost and hard to access, and we kind of lose touch with our own gifts and our own magic and our own medicine because of our life experiences and kind of challenges that we have along the way. And so I'm really passionate about helping people kind of find where that buried pain is and really understanding what the stories are that are kind of operating beneath the surface that kind of operate our lives, whether we want them to or not. And especially in instances where folks have had a lot of trauma in childhood or just had like, some very large traumatic event, it can be very difficult to actually like feel that sense of like hope and magic and dreaming. And parts can get disassociated or completely cut off from us, stuck in like a different place and time or in that moment of trauma. And so what I do is like help bring those parts back to the center and kind of be able to reintegrate those and uproot the old stories and figure out like what kind of the true story is that our soul is trying to follow. And so that's kind of the overarching theme of what I want to do with folks. And I do it through like a mix of modalities. I use shamanic journeying as a technique, which is like a trance state that is done through just listening to drums or rattles or like didgeridoo or something that has a really like repetitive beat that helps introduce that hypnagogic state. And through that, I do things like soul retrievals, which is helping to basically retrieve those pieces of the soul or parts of your energy or power that are kind of stuck outside of place and time, or they're maybe stuck in a certain time and place, but that is not, congruent with where we're currently at in life. Um, so the soul retrieval is one aspect of that, and ancestral healing is another thing that I do through the shamanic journeying, which is basically like figuring out when there's larger overarching patterns and like instances where we've inherited our ancestors' trauma and maybe aren't aware that that life can be different because these are imprints that come in at birth with us, so they can be really hard to see out of, and it can be really defeating things too, like not having a hope, not having like a sense of dream. And So what I do is, like, in the ancestral realm, basically figure out where in the line that kind of started. Like for me, I see the ancestral line almost as like a big star, like flower of life is what they're called. I don't know if you know like what symbol that is, but I kind of see it as that, and then I start to see like where it gets dark and muddy and maybe has like different just a different vibe to it, and I kind of go into there to find like where it originated and help resolve the originating ancestor. So the way I understand our ancestors is we have our whole, healed, and well ancestors, and then we also have unresolved ancestors that are also referred to as like hungry ghosts, or just they're not whole and healed. Like they've got some unresolved stuff that is still hanging on, and when they haven't fully completed that death process of like going back into divine source and kind of moving through that life and learning all those life lessons, that's when like the trauma can kind of go down the line and be inherited as well. And so in that instance, I'm like looking at the originating ancestor, figuring out, okay, like what happened here? What was the main unresolving factor? What kind of patterns of behavior came down because of that? And what do they need to be able to kind of complete that death cycle fully, so that we can then bring the gifts down through the line instead of it being like a burden. Because a lot of like inherited trauma, like it's twisted gifts, it's things that we learned how to survive in the moment, that maybe weren't fully in alignment with the earth and the sky and the elements, and so it just gets twisted, and the expression of it gets really wonky. Like an example would be like, someone deciding they were going to sail across the seas to pursue their dream, and then they die on that voyage, and they just hold on to this belief of like, well, if you go to pursue your dreams, you die. And so then you have that story kind of as an underlay in the ancestral line, just kind of operating stuff like totally below the surface. Like usually these things are not like super conscious. It's just like weird things that seem to always happen in your life, or like things that seem to be really hard to like go after.
Mm.
And so like that's like the ancestral realm of it.
Hmm. Wow. I have like all these notes of the things I could like totally speak to and ask about. Okay, well, it seems like the one crossroad with astrology is that you're looking at soul purpose, which we look at a lot. But what you're trying to do is kind of uncover where people are blocked from their soul purpose. And I love what you're saying of like if you uncover a lot of the trauma, you can get back to the magic of who you are.
Mhm.
I mean, so is trauma just a I mean, I know trauma can come in the form of like many different things. But do you think trauma in general is kind of anything that blocks us from expression?
I I do think that. Yeah, I think there are like little T traumas and big T traumas, that can happen in our life. And I feel that anything that's traumatic, it is something that didn't get resolved in that moment. It's something that for some reason we kind of went through the experience and almost got like to a sticking point. Sometimes
Yeah,
it's like,
sticky.
yeah, sometimes it's the event itself, or sometimes it's like a little bit afterwards. Like where stuff just doesn't seem to be able to move beyond a certain point, and you're kind of always like cycling back to that event or that thing that someone said or something like that, because you know it can be just as simple as someone like being a dick and saying something like really awful that just like hits your heart, and one day where you're like feeling particularly like sensitive and vulnerable, you know, like it can come in many ways. It doesn't have to be like, you know, the things that are, I think, traditionally classified as like assault or abuse or things like that. Like it can be many different things.
Sometimes that comment, though, that one dickish comment, it's echoing something that is much deeper in the
Oh yeah,
system. So
definitely.
like the little T's, if there's the big T, they connect.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. One of the processes that I use with folks is this process of like etheric embodiment, and basically going into our energy body, into that etheric body, and kind of seeing like when we do have events that trigger us, like, okay, what's actually like going on beneath the surface here? Like, why did this trigger me so much? Like, what feelings are coming up, what stories are coming up, what beliefs are coming up because, you know, this person just said this thing and it just like derailed us, you know? So it's kind of like trying to look at that derailing with a bit of objectivity and being like, okay, well, what did I feel like was happening to me? And then kind of being like, okay, when did the first time I ever feel this start to happen? How old did I feel in this moment? And like a lot of times, like the age is like 6, you know, I felt like I was 6 when this happened. And then we can like, be like, okay, like where is that 6-year-old living inside your body? Like, do you actually have access to them in the body somewhere, or are they out there somewhere? Because like we can disassociate in a multitude of marvelous ways to survive.
Mm.
And you know, sometimes those parts, they're still inside of us in ways, still like within our energy body and in our energy field, but they're just kind of a little bit like marginalized or disassociated from like our core self and the way we know ourselves. But like with soul loss, that's when parts are kind of like way outside of our influence and like really stuck like outside of place and time. So there's a lot we can do even without like having to do soul retrievals. And like honestly, one of my favorite things when I feel triggered is just like asking myself, okay, how old do I feel right now? Because that like cuts through some of the BS like pretty quickly, because you can recognize like, oh, I feel like I'm like 8 right now. Okay, no wonder everything's like, wow. Like you can kind
Yeah.
of bring it down, give a little attention to that 8-year-old self. And then when I'm in like a better space, I can kind of go internally and do some discussion with that 8-year-old self and be like, all right, buddy, like what's going on? Why are we feeling this way? Like what's kind of going on in the scene that they're in, and figure out like what happened, why they're there, what needs are like needing to be met, and how they can kind of function differently going forward.
So you're talking about how traumas are things where they get stuck or unresolved. It makes me think of like traumas as being something that causes cognitive dissonance.
Mhm,
You,
mhm.
you know, it's like when somebody says something to us, even if they didn't mean it as traumatizing, if it sets us off into a cognitive dissonance pattern, I think that can stick us and make it hard to move forward. And it's like, I know
Yeah.
with traumas I've dealt with that I couldn't get resolved with the person, I've had to go into my own notebook and get rid of the cognitive dissonance, whether
Mhm.
talking with myself or talking with God or talking with people I love. But I couldn't talk to this person about it for whatever reason. I had to go to all these other,
Yeah.
and it seems like shamans are brilliant at dealing with those situations where you can't get to the person, like you can never resolve it with that person.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, yeah, I think that happens quite a lot, you know, where we're not able to resolve it with the person. And like the way I understand it is, you know, we get in a dynamic with those people anyways. And so like especially in like things of traumatizing things, like they become a voice inside of us, you know, they become a part of our internal landscape, and they're living there rent free. Like and so, you know, it is on us to recognize like, okay, how is this still living in me? What is this person like? You know, there's lots of internal mothers and fathers and grandparent figures and teachers and things like that that I've had to work with, and just get them out of my body, out of my like, you know, scripts that are kind of running the show.
Interesting. So tell us about like a soul retrieval. Exactly what what kind of things make us lose part of our soul, or what does that look like to lose part of your soul somewhere?
Um, it can look like so PTSD is usually like heaps of soul loss. It is times where like that part has gone so far outside of our influence that like we cannot seem to change it. Like we can do loads of talk therapy, we can try to do art or things about it, but it doesn't seem to like resolve. It just seems to like loop and loop and loop. And like that's what I understand PTSD to be, is like, you know, it's just all these moments where parts of us have just gone away, and they're very, very difficult to bring into our consciousness or work with directly. And like from a felt sense experience, it's almost like it can be when you're like reliving the moments and having like emotional flashbacks, or like the full like visual flashbacks and just kind of replaying it in your head. It can also feel like falling into like a pit of darkness or despair that just feels like bottomless and that there's like nothing there. Um, and sometimes it can feel really slippery. Like you will get triggered, you'll feel all these emotions, but as soon as you try to like engage with them or like understand like, okay, what's going on here, and like kind of have some sort of like inner dialogue with the emotions, they just kind of like slip out of your hands. Like it's almost like trying to grab sand, and everything just like keeps falling, and it's just so hard to like continue that traction.
Mm.
So that's kind of how I would recognize soul loss in someone. Um, and as far as like what can cause it, it again, it's like so varied. I mean, typical stuff like sexual abuse, deep trauma, narcissistic abuse can also cause a lot of soul loss. And when abuse is done over like a long period of time, it can create almost like this whole section of self that's kind of like related to all those events that just like kind of goes off. And like it may have happened over many different years, and they may be in kind of different parts, may have left in like different spots, but there's usually like a similar pattern to it of like, oh well, anything that had to do with me like acknowledging my heart's true feelings was not accessible. So like all that just gone, and like kind of stuck in another place in time.
Mm. Interesting. Sorry, it makes me think about, okay, so when if some people have abusive charts, you know, like and it's really interesting about how to deal with abuse, because it's kind of controversial in some ways to say that you should abuse someone back. Sorry, I'm going off on a, this is a little bit of astrological tangent, but it's like when an abusive chart comes at me, I'm always like, "Oh, are we going to abuse each other? Let's go." Like, because but I realize why that is because I don't like this thing where a thing didn't get resolved in the moment, and then I'm stuck with the cognitive distance. Like it's like if you let the person abuse you without kind of equalizing the moment and having a fight, basically. And I know this is in a lot of abuse situations we don't have the option to do this, but I'm just saying that, like, if someone started abusing us as adults, I think you can cut it right there by handling it right in the moment, and then you don't have the cognitive dissonance left with you, you know. But abuse is never pretty, right? It's like if someone's
Mhm.
abusing you and you start abusing them back, that looks like a big conflict. Basically, it looks like a fight, you know what I mean? um but I learned something from this, because it's like I never knew why I did that, but I all I knew is that when I don't handle the abuse right away, I'm left with this horrible cycle spiral of what could I
Mhm.
have done differently, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So anyway,
Yeah,
that's
I do think there's a lot to be said about being able to I don't know, match the energy when it's needed, you know, and being able to stand up for yourself in different ways. And I don't know that I think there are many different ways to handle like abuse coming at you. Like sometimes the answer is like, bam, like fight, like,
Yeah.
oh, you're gonna throw this at me, I'll throw it right back at you, you know. And I think that is the right response sometimes, and other times, like I think it's the right response to offer peace and kindness, and like they throw something back at you and you're like, oh really, what about this instead? And like it just kind of like can disrupt the pattern that they're expecting so bad that it just like fizzles out, and it still is a way of like dealing with the abuse and handling it in the moment, but it doesn't actually have to be like as abusive as what they were like throwing at you.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I know where this looks like a tangent, but we do look at crossroads in this show, and it's like one of the things we remedy a lot in astrology is Mars problems. Like people always are talking about Mercury in retrograde, but we deal with Mars a lot, which is violence or yeah, like a verbal abuse,
Mm.
sexual abuse. Like people who have really impetuous charts do are sex offenders, things like that. So we are dealing with all kinds of people, and it's like and people don't we don't know what to do with Mars energy a lot. Like, do you fight it? Do you walk away as a pacifist? And I think the danger of being a pacifist, what I'm learning from you, is that we get stuck with the trauma because we didn't nip it in the bud right there. But because shamans exist, like we can choose pacifism and then going off and like having a shaman help like destroy the situation psychically and spiritually. Like I feel like shamans are fighters. I mean, is this shaman a form of like warrior healer kind of?
Yes, yeah, warrior healer. And like I've heard some people refer to it as spirit lawyering, which I feel is pretty apt because a lot of it is like it is going in and looking at like all the parties and their energies at play and kind of figuring out like, okay, like what's the dynamic here? Like what's going on, and how can we bring resolution to, I mean, it doesn't have to be both parties because it's the person I'm working with, right? Like how can we bring internal resolution here, like what's actually needed.
Mhm.
And I think that the key when being in abusive situations is doing what you need to do to get out safely. And sometimes, yeah, that is going to be standing up for yourself, and sometimes that is going to be choosing pacifism and moving out and like just taking what you can and go.
Mhm.
um but there's always ways to go back to it in the energetic realm and have it resolved. Like it doesn't have to sit as this big like thing in the background. Like it's totally possible to move it.
It feels like there's two things that are happening. There's like the power imbalance. Like if you learn a power imbalance as a kid, you're being powered over, then
Mhm.
having access to being empowered as an adult can be a challenge. So
Yes.
this process can help that empowerment happen as an adult, but also bring that safety that you've secured as an adult to your child, to your and
Hmm.
to where this disempowerment happened.
Yeah, yeah,
And
absolutely.
is that the shamanic journey?
So shamanic journeying is like a very specific like skill set and tool.
Hmm.
That's the like using the sonic driver to go into the like trance state. Um, and so like I wouldn't necessarily always have to use the shamanic journey to be able to resolve things. Like sometimes we're able to do it just through like emotional clearing and being like
Hmm.
in kind of that internal landscape and seeing like what the layout of the land is basically, and figuring out how to bring resolution there.
Bring
Interesting.
safety.
Yeah.
I'm curious about the use of the didgeridoo. Because the didgeridoo is a really beautiful instrument, actually. And
Mhm.
I knew someone who played the didgeridoo, and he would like sit in front of your chakras and blow the didgeridoo
Oh,
through your
cool.
chakras. So, like, how do you use the didgeridoo in the thing?
It would be just this. I personally don't use the didgeridoo too often. For my journeys, I use mostly like drums and rattles. But there are a lot of tracks that have that, and because it has such a low like vibrating frequency, and the didgeridoo is very like rhythmic, like that's really the key for like introducing that hypnagogic state, because they do operate at a certain frequency that actually does just trigger a trance-like state within us, like innately. Like all humans have it. It is not something that like only shamans can do. Like literally anyone can do shamanic journeying. We like shamanic cultures, it was just a practice that literally everyone did. It was not reserved just for the shamans, or like the medicine keepers. It was how indigenous folks got in direct communication with spirit, and how they knew like their own, you know, spirit guides and helpers and things like that. And I feel like we're in a society and culture now where a lot of that has been like mystified, and there is like an air of like, oh well, we have to go to a holy person to like receive holiness, because like the church is super like hierarchical, and especially in like the Judeo-Christian mindset and setup that we have in like America, at least, like there's so much religious hierarchy that's just kind of like sprinkled through everything as just like a, well, this is what reality is. And I think that's very damning because it has kind of taken away people's knowledge that like we are all God, like we are all sacred, we are all able to have these direct lines to spirit and to like our helping team, you know, like. And I think everyone has different ways of sensing and knowing that information, and it really is important for folks to develop a way to know that for themselves, and not just rely on some holy person or other person or someone who's like higher than them to like provide all the answers, because that's how you get in cults, and that's how you like get in narcissistic problematic relationships and things like that, you know, is relying on some like external factor to give you some answers. And I feel that we all have that innate ability, and we can all use these tools to like get in greater connection with our helping team and spirit in general.
I like that point that if you have, you know, more of an in touchness with your spirit guides or your oversoul or your ancestors or God or whatever, that you're less susceptible to like being taken over by a cult or a human who acts as if they're a god and things like that. And you know, I think that that's a beautiful point right there. Um, Rachel, so Rachel, do you think that Pluto transits would be a good time for people to have shamanic work done?
I yes. Yeah, especially if it's a trine or sextile,
Yeah. Oh, so
bringing the good.
so Pluto in astrology brings like situations or energies that are really intense, and like sometimes people get plutonianly attached to things, whether it be
Mhm.
objects, people. They get in these kind of really intense relationships where they can't get out of them, and then there's abuse that occurs. Like I guess in Plutonian energies, we sometimes need deep healing. Like shamanic,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like shamanic work is really apt for like Pluto situations. So, I mean, we could use a shaman to remedy a lot of things in a chart, but I do think, you know, sometimes when people are under certain or if they have a natal chart that is very Plutonian, like that goes really deep, is really deep and constantly like, you know, I feel like there's some charts that might need shamans more than other charts because of the depth of the person's like ruminations basically.
Mm-hmm.
Um do you, so then that makes me want to ask April, do you think that some people are, how do I put this, over, okay, I'm not trying to sound controversial, I'm just trying to ask an interesting question, which is, are some people too traumatizable?
Hmm. I think there are folks that are probably more susceptible to various traumas. And I think a lot of that is probably like family system origin and things that were probably like happening in the family. I think sometimes it is possible to be in family systems where like maybe the parents are quite controlling, but like the abuse is not outright, like nothing horrible was done necessarily, like, but there can still be like these weird instructions about how like the world works and how life is and like what your role in all of that is. And so I think when that is the case, when folks like kind of grow up in a very controlling environment, it does make it a lot easier to get into like abusive relationships. And you know, abusive relationships doesn't have to be just romantic relationship. It can be friendships, it can be jobs, it can be, you know, all sorts of things. And so I think there is something to like, you know, if you have more kind of trauma in your past, you are more likely to run into it like later in life as well, until you're able to kind of resolve those.
Yeah, work it out.
Yeah, like get out of it and in your whole being, you know, because there's ways that we just keep reliving it again and again. And you know, I think there's also something to be said about like I do believe in past lives and like the general like karmic flow of things. And I think there are some times where we are born into lives, into family systems and things like that, where like we are going to encounter a lot of trauma and have like really big, hard lessons. But the way I look at life is like it's here as a teacher. Like life is always teaching us, the universe is always like throwing lessons at us, and it's our responsibility to understand like, okay, what lesson is being taught here. And like, you know, for folks who do seem to get in a lot of abusive relationships, like what's that about? Like what internal dynamic and stories or beliefs are playing beneath the surface that kind of lead you to seek out these like particular relationships? Because like for myself, I've definitely found that as I resolved my own trauma and my own like victimization of like myself in ways that I was like legitimately victimized as a child, but like as I resolved those things, I stopped having those relationships like come at me from like other people, because it got a whole lot easier to recognize the red flags when I saw them. Because before, like they weren't red flags. They were just flags that didn't have color. Like, because I was so used to the red flags. Like,
Wow.
and so they were no longer that. But now, like, I can just see people and be like, oh, okay, there's some red flags. Like they're gonna stay over there instead of being in the like internal friend circle or whatever, you know.
Yeah, interesting. Well, in astrology, we look at four influences on a growing creature, at least my lineage. You know, because we're looking at development theory into that life path and purpose, like you brought up earlier. So we look at like the genetics structure. We look at culture and climate, which include family dynamic layer from when you're growing up, and then we look at the chart layer. And I think you're definitely making a really good point. There's something in our family dynamic layer could make us sensitive to being traumatized because we were traumatized when we were young,
Mm-hmm.
and so we really are like no thanks on that trauma thing. But the or we can be susceptible to it because we're used to it maybe, and so we let people in who have red flags, right? And then I think there's the chart layer of some charts I would say are kind of past focused. Like Rachel, would you agree that like charts that have a lot in the fourth house might be kind of going back into the childhood a lot and being like, when I was young, this and that, like kind of
Yeah,
can't deal
definitely.
with some of the traumas. So I think, and then there are charts that are in some ways supposed to be traumatized when they're young so that they can become shamans, right? Like it's like we have life paths where, maybe if April, wouldn't have had some of those experiences in your childhood, you wouldn't be doing this work now. And I think, maybe it is in your chart to have had some of that path, so I
Mm-hmm.
think that's the crossroad there is like we would nestle what you're saying into this, like this, including the chart layer as part of,
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Yeah,
Rachel,
I definitely feel that I would not be where I am and doing what I'm doing had it not been for like having an insanely traumatic childhood and needing to like work through those things. Because that's what brought me into this was like, all right, like I need to change my internal world so that I'm not like a sad ball of depression and anger all the time. Like it was not a good space to be. Um, and like I really feel that actually like deeply traumatic things can activate like various gifts and like abilities that we have. But a lot of times because it's been activated through the trauma, the gift itself is a bit twisted. It's not coming out in quite its true form because we got there through like a deeply traumatic thing that just kind of flipped part of us like a little bit upside down or just a little cattywampus from how center would be. And those gifts, like when we use them from center, are beautiful. But like if it's a little bit sideways, it's maybe like schizophrenia or DID or just other various things because it came online in a very scary moment of needing to survive.
Mm-hmm.
In a protective way.
Yeah, it's some work to figure out like what got twisted where and if it's sustained abuse over a period of time, like there's lots of little twisties that happen and it takes some time to get in there and like untwist everything and figure out like, okay, what is actually like true center and aligned and what does that like look and feel like. And it's different for everyone. There's not like a one size fits all approach. It very much is like just figuring out everyone's own unique kind of setup and what they've got going on and it's like an onion. There's so many layers and just going in and getting the layers as we can.
Nice. Yeah, a lot of Pluto times in a person's life last for like a year to 3 years. And so I think if you're in a Pluto period, you could work with a shaman for a long time to really uncover a lot of that trauma and do all the untwisting. Rachel, I know you had some questions. Do
Well,
you?
yeah, I was curious about the magical t-shirt thing that you have.
Oh, yeah.
I think if you were in a Pluto transit, this could be a magical remedy.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is this magical t-shirt?
So I have a set of a bunch of different like containers, like jars, circles, hands, cauldrons, and also like magical beings and stars and crystals and various like witchy symbols and herbs and things. And I have it set up so folks can basically like set an intention that they want, if it's for like healing or protection, or maybe they just want to feel like more magical or more, I don't know, just centered and in their own like power. It's a process of kind of going through and looking at the different pictures and seeing like what resonates for that. And then I put them together into like a single shirt to kind of see what, I don't know, what they can wear to bring those things in.
Do you have like a favorite story about the shirt that you create for people and how it affected them?
I've only done it live with folks a few times, but it was really cool to like start from, the different things that I had. And then, it takes me a few minutes to put them together and stuff. But when I did, like, I could just see them like light up and like just feel, I could just viscerally feel a shift in them. And like, they all seemed so excited to be able to wear them. Like one guy got like kind of teary eyed and was just like really, I don't know, touched by it and thought it was really cool. And let's see. Oh, I don't have.
It just seemed like such a unique way to bring like images can do so much for us. It was a unique way to literally embody around your body things that you were trying to work for or create or symbolize for growth. I just love the idea of a magical t-shirt.
Yeah, so I have like this is one of the ones that I made.
Oh,
Wow.
that's beautiful.
It's a very shaman looking style.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. If you're here watching and you have a question for April, feel free to type it in the chat. Oh wow, I love it.
That
It's
eagle. Is that an
Yeah.
eagle?
It's a little
A
crow
griffin?
dragon.
Oh, okay. Crow dragon.
Yeah.
You paint. Yes?
Yes, I do.
What things do you paint?
I mostly nowadays paint bones. So
Yes.
I get animal bones and I get them all through all ethical sources. It's never things that are killed just to have the bones. I will also like I keep dead things when I find them and will clean them up myself and stuff. And so I will kind of commune with the spirit of the animal and
Hmm.
see what type of like shapes and colors and gifts it has to bring through. And then I will paint that on the bone. Sometimes it is a process where I do a shamanic journey to them. Other times, like just holding the bone, I will just see like the colors that want to kind of be there. So it's kind of different with each one. But yeah, I paint the bones. I also have been painting ostrich eggs, which I'm calling dragon eggs to make them like little magical things.
See. Well, yeah. How do you feel that art entwines with being a shaman? Like, are they connected?
For me, they've been really connected because art is how I have worked through a lot of things. Like a lot of what needs to happen when we have trauma or just unresolved events from the past is it just needs to be given expression of some sort. And sometimes that is words, but sometimes we don't have words for things. Sometimes like it's just a movement or like a um, I don't know, a sound that needs to come out. And I have found art to be a very, very helpful way to give shape and form to things that like have no words inside of me. Cause a lot of like, especially like complex emotions that are old, from when we were like 3,
Mhm.
when everything is just big and all emotions, like you don't have words, you don't have the words then, like that part of us still doesn't have the words. And so art can be a really, really powerful way to be able to give those feelings voice and expression without actually having to like vocalize and name it. It can just be, okay, I got to get this out of me and onto a paper, which I do a mix. I do a lot with my like I use Procreate on my iPad, so I do a lot of stuff on there for like art therapy type stuff. And I will also just do like mandalas, like just starting with a circle. And like something about just starting with a circle on the page helps kind of like hone in to certain things and be like, okay, what does this feel like? What's the texture? What's the shape? What's the color here? And they're usually pretty abstract, but it can be a really powerful process to get it out of the body and like create some distance. And then I also like once I've done that, I have a process of kind of like engaging in communication with the art of like, okay, like what are you here to tell me? Like what's going on here? What story do you have? What emotions do you have? And like it helps to be able to give some word to what seemed so like wordless and unknown before.
Yeah, that's so interesting that you say that. I swear you have a Pisces. Well, you have Pisces in your chart. I'm a Pisces moon, and Shane told me this because he has Pisces over in the house of the partner. But anyway, the point is when you get overwhelmed with flooded with emotion, that's why I play my piano. Like people always think they're always like, you must be really patient to play your piano all these years since I was 4, and I was like, I literally couldn't survive without my piano.
Yeah.
Because I get overstim on cognitive dissonance on things in the world, whether it be like my daughter wants peas and someone doesn't want peas. What do I do? Like I will just literally overstim on cognitive dissonance. And then if I play my piano, all that energy moves through the
Yes.
amp. And so that's exactly what art does for me too. And so I think charts that are deeply sensitive, or people that are deeply sensitive, make more art, because there's those a lot of that cognitive dissonance of like caring about so many things at once. And and so yeah, I don't know if you've ever heard that. People are like, you must be really patient to make that art. And I'm like, you have no idea. Not make this art, kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, it is definitely like a need to do it, to be able to get it out. Otherwise, like, yeah, it just stays inside, like, and like that's no good.
Well,
Like,
and they say
no
emotions like energy and motion, right? And so when you have all these, emotions, and then if you make the art, it's like all of a sudden all that energy moves. And there's something
yeah,
about making the picture. You like, when I'm
Yeah.
making a picture, I'm always thinking about the picture and not like the trauma that I experienced. You know what I mean? It's like there's
mhm,
actually, I actually experienced a trauma a few months ago that I was in cognitive dissonance about, and I read a book on it and I did all this stuff, but I finally eventually made a sad clown beaded thing where I'm like, bead sad clown. And so I'm like, look, because I was a sad clown about it. And so like, but like,
mhm.
but then when I'm beading the picture, I'm just thinking about like where this bead goes and this and that, and it almost like erases this big situation and
Yeah.
puts you down into this like micro situation that's way less traumatic.
Yeah, there's something about like doing art like that that really helps to transmute the energy from like how it's stuck and like just so loud inside, into giving it something else. And also like giving it to something that's outside of us. Like we don't need to carry it all in.
Mhm.
And like I'm a big proponent too of like burning the thing once it's done. Like that can be a really really powerful way to fully release the stuff, is just like you
Wow.
make the drawing, you get it out of you, and then you burn it and just let the fire like take it away, transform it the rest of the way. And
That's so cool.
yeah.
Trauma transmutation.
Hmm.
Oh my god. Okay, sorry, Rachel. Do you have another question on your list?
No, no, I was thinking just don't burn the beaded clown.
Yeah,
I will. I will
don't
not.
burn plastic things. That's no good. But
I burn a lot of incense, though. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So then, I really am curious about whether or not you see visions in your work, like
Hmm.
when you're doing these shamanic journeys with people. A lot of shamans get visions, like I saw a totem animal for you, or this or that, or like, do you see?
yeah. So when I do the shamanic journeys, I am a very clairvoyant person. Like I get visuals a lot. I will also get I feel like my biggest clairs are clairvoyance, clairsentience, and like claircognizance. Like I often will just know things, but usually in the journeys, I will get like pretty vivid imagery. Like it looks like a movie to me a lot of times, and I can describe the scene, the colors, like what's going on. And I will also feel a lot of emotion. So it's like, oh, I'm in this cave that is just full of despair, or like I can it's like I can just like taste and feel the emotions in the air, and kind of what the whole space is made up of. And sometimes I will also get flashes of things, like if people are talking to me about like a problem that they're having, or like a recurring just pattern that seems to be coming up in their life, or like thing that they're dealing with, I will start to see like kind of what that looks like within them. If it looks like a big like jumbled mess, if it looks like a maybe like a spear in their back or something, like I will kind of have like flashes of insight for how that energy is like laying down how I see it. And it doesn't mean that they necessarily see it the same way. I think everyone has a different way of like interpreting the same energy a lot of times. Um, but yeah, that is definitely something that will like pop up. And sometimes I'll also just get visions from people just very randomly. They're not like talking about anything. It's just something will just pop up for whatever reason it does that.
It's okay. This is an aside, but I was talking to my friend the other day who she's a Christian, and I love God, so like I'm totally down with Christianity. I'm a Christian Scientist, she was talking about how she's been praying at church on Mondays, and I was like, well, "What's that look like?" And she's like, "Well, you hold your hand over the person and you pray, and then you get visions." And I was like, "You get visions? That sounds like being a shaman or whatever." And she's like, "Well, then we call them prophetic visioning." And I was just like, "Oh my God, Christians and shaman, like priests or people praying over you is so similar to a shaman. You know what I mean? Like, do you feel in some ways that you're praying over people? Is that, I mean,
Um, for me, prayer has a very like specific energy with of like blessing and benevolence and kind of that like
Reverence.
divine flow. And I feel like sometimes the prayers and the blessings are woven in with the work that I do, especially for like if I, when I'm bringing like a soul part back, because they're usually they do usually like tell me what the gifts are and kind of like a lot of the ancestors will like lay down blessings too and be like, you know, say this, like feel like be sure to impart these things. And so I feel like that definitely comes into play. And you know, I think there's a lot of overlap between a lot of the different religions. Like there's a lot of stuff that is very similar and is maybe called something over here, but is the same thing that's done over here called something entirely different.
totally. And I guess you're doing something different than praying because you're actually trying to uncover the sticking points and things by asking a lot of questions. And you know, like you're like praying would be standing there talking to God, letting God flow through you. You know, whereas the shamanic work seems like you're actually doing an uncovery process. Do you ask a lot of questions in your work?
I do. Yeah, there's a lot of questions and a lot of like figuring out what's what and like even with the soul retrievals, like I'm not going there and like snatching them and coming them back. I'm like, I basically have to like introduce myself and like say what I'm doing there, why I'm there, like what's going on. A lot of times they, you know, they're so cut off from the person in the current time that they're like surprised that they're still alive or they're, you know, surprised that they're a certain age now. Like this part is like its own consciousness, you know, and the way I look at like shamanism is we are often going into like, you know, different realms and dimensions and places to get to those parts and bring them back to the here and now.
Hmm.
And you know, some of those realms overlap with other areas and can be, I don't know, populated by a lot of different energies and entities. It's not necessarily that like this soul part is all alone in a void somewhere. Sometimes they're in a quite lively area with a whole bunch of other people and things going on. So it is a lot of just questions to suss things out and figure out like what's what and like what's needed to be able to bring kind of the peace and resolution to leave that spot and kind of come back.
Hmm. Nice. Rachel, do you have any last questions?
Um, you also create customized rituals for people?
Yes. Yeah. So for that, that's a process of kind of meeting with the person and figuring out like what they've got going on. If there's a particular like emotion that keeps coming up or event that keeps coming up that like they feel they have access to like most of the parts, but maybe it's a little bit too hard to like carry alone.
Mhm.
Or maybe like the grief is just too big or something like that. I work with each of the elements earth, air, fire, and water, and kind of come up with a ritual that kind of suits the need. So like fire is really good for like complete transformations of things, laying things to death, and like reconnecting with passions and creativity and drive. Water is really good for dealing with emotions and things that need to like flow again. Like I think of depression as being like frozen grief.
Stagnant, yeah.
like water is really good for helping to come in and like melt that and bring back the flow and wash away that stagnancy and kind of cleanse it and clear it out a bit. And then we would work with the earth for like planting new seeds in life, and also the earth can be worked with for like laying things to rest, like having a funeral for a part of you that maybe like really did want to die, and maybe that like does need to happen on a level. Like I feel like as a culture there's a lot of like stigma around death and what that means, and I see death and healing as two sides of the same coin. And often we need to give death to things in order to be able to step into the healing that is there.
Decay and nutritive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And so, yeah, the earth is very, very helpful for those things. And, the earth is what composts the dead to give back into earth for like new life. And so like that's very important. And then
so air, really quick.
Air, it would be like stories we tell ourselves that aren't true, like just repeating lies and maybe things that we weren't able to give voice to, because the air is a lot about like the mental realm, the stories that we tell ourselves about dreams and visions. And so we'd work with the air when like those things seem to be hard to reach. And like the way I understand ritual work with working with the elements is, we're not asking the elements to do it for us. We're identifying the pattern, the belief, the story that's there, giving it a name, like very succinctly, which like, spirit speaks in many ways. So it doesn't always have to be words. It can be just a picture or something that like represents the like general gist of what's going on. And then you work with the element to release it. And like spirit comes in and basically like lifts up the weight of that so that you can then make the steps forward of like making new choices, deciding, like figuring out, what was the story doing beneath the surface? How has it been running my life? And how can I make different choices now so that, I can move forward in a different way? Because like spirit's not going to hold that up for forever. Like it's on us to take the new steps. But the ritual is a way of kind of bringing in spirit's hands so that they can lift up some of that burden, that they can offer the help. But, the help has to be a very direct and clear ask. It can't just be flailing and screaming for help. Like that doesn't, it's just not focused enough and doesn't give like
it's too chaotic.
Yeah, to have a good inquiry or good issue. Okay, I'm sorry I have to stop us here. We only have 1 minute, and I have two quick questions for you, April. One is, can you work over Zoom?
Yes.
Okay. And then how can people get a hold of you if they want to work with you?
So my website is awakeningouroboros.com.
How do you spell that?
Ouroboros is spelled Ouroboros.
Wait, Ouroboros?
Yes, yeah, Awakening Ouroboros.
At what?
It's just awakeningouroboros.com. Or my email is aprilstaroak@gmail.com.
April.
I'm currently working on putting my website online, so it's not actually up yet, but it will be by the end of this week.
Okay. And then this is going to be an annoying question that you're going to be annoyed with me about this, but do you charge by the hour or by the situation? How do you
I have different pricing for the different things that I do. And I do a sliding scale for stuff. So I will have that posted on the website for each of the different services and stuff.
Okay. Well, if you are in a Pluto transit or not, and you want to work with April, this was so cool, April. Really good to finally get to talk to you. We always see each other when there's a bunch of people around, and now I really feel like I know what you do. So that's cool. Thank
Very
you.
Multifaceted.
Yes.
Rachel, thank you for your questions. They were awesome. And we will see everyone later. Bye-bye.
Bye. Next week.